Yo, 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 YouTube! I'm back with 5 things I've got up to recently, and I've already got my next 5 completed as well. So all of a sudden, things started falling into place in terms of finishing some games, finally watching some movies I'd meant to for a while, and getting through some TV series and stuff. So yeah, it's been like just as busy as normal, but all of a sudden, you get all these things accomplished. Like being a nerd is accomplishing something. Anyways, today, Oak Ridge Pride. This was one of our practice jerseys. I've already gone through all my game jerseys in the last number of videos. I think I've got about 3 or 4 practice jerseys. I don't remember which grades these were from, which ones came first and which ones came last, but I just thought I'd pick them at random in order, and yeah, this is what we used to practice in. So we got a couple books to start. First up is a book from, I believe, 2023 called Fourth Wing. This story takes place in a fictional fantasy land called Navarre, I guess is how you would probably say it. And it concentrates on this school facility called Basgiath Academy. And this is a fictional realm where there are dragons and other types of creatures, and riders are trained to bond with, or people that go to this school are trained to bond with dragons and then become dragon riders. And that's Navarre's primary method of defense is these dragons and their riders that patrol the borders and keep incursions from rival territories decimating their land and their safety or whatever. So the main character in the story is a young, around 20-year-old girl named Violet Sorengale, and she has some physical, I wouldn't call them failings, but she's really small, she's really fragile, her hair has already gone kind of gray in some spots, and her father always thought she was going to be a scribe. So in this Basgiath school, there's 4 different kind of areas, I believe, if I remember correctly, you can go into. There's the healer quadrant, there's the scribes, there's the infantry, and then there's the dragon riders, who are the most notorious of all the students at the school, and are also the ones put in the most danger. So she's really smart, she's really fragile. Her father kind of trained her to take on that scribe mentality, and that's when she came of age and she was going to go to this school. That's when she thought that's the quadrant she thought she was going to go to. However, her mother is the general, the supreme leader of the school and the army, the dragon army or whatever, and she makes Violet go to the riders quadrant. So the thing about becoming a rider is there's only a certain amount of dragons available, and only one rider can bond with one dragon at a time. So, and all the people that go into the riders quadrant want to bond with the dragon and become a dragon rider. So going to the riders quadrant is vicious. People will kill each other, murder each other, push a guy off a cliff. Oh, sorry. Yeah. There's one more down out of the way, so I can hopefully become a rider, right? So it's a very vicious school, at least for the riders. So, and there's all these tests, and you have to practice combat, and eventually, if you do bond with the dragon, then you have to learn how to become a dragon rider. So this first story, it's going to be part of a series apparently, is Violet's entrance into this school and how she just barely survives each day, but eventually gaining some friends, eventually becomes stronger, leans on them, they lean on her. But the biggest area of strife for her is a wing leader in the riders quadrant, a 3rd-year guy named Xaden Riorson, who is actually the son of a general that led a rebellion against Navarre, and Xaden's father was killed by Violet's mother, or at least at her command anyways, and as were a lot of the other rebel traders, but their children were allowed to live as long as they promised to become dragon riders and pledged to Navarre. So she goes to this school, and her sister Mira, who's a dragon rider, says, avoid this guy at all costs. he wants to kill you for what mom did to his dad, sort of thing. But it ends up there a little something happens between those two, and this this kind of reminded me of a dragon story, reminded or mixed with 50 Shades of Grey or something like that. There was all these like fucking scenes and stuff like that, and which I don't mind. So it was kind of like a romance slash porno book mixed with a dragon rider training book. It was really interesting, and I'd heard it had really good reviews, and I tore right through it. I thought it was a really good book, really entertaining story, and of course a good idea pulled from a whole bunch of other original good ideas. Like, you know, dragons and riders are no new concept in fantasy fiction. This is just kind of a different take on that, and it's a good one. So in the end, it ends on a cliffhanger. Violet has a dead brother, who maybe isn't quite, spoiler alert, isn't quite so dead, and she also learns that some of the mythical monsters that the kids were told about at bedtime and stuff like that, that were just supposed to be make-believe, maybe might not be so make-believe either. So it ends on a bit of a cliffhanger, and with a bunch of revelations and stuff like that. And yeah, based on how much I enjoyed the first book, I would probably take a run at the second whenever it's going to come out. Next book, book 1 in the Shadow of the Avatar trilogy, called Shadows of Doom. This is the second? I can't believe it's only the second. I'm trying to see where I put these books. Oh, no. What is that book? Oh, yeah. No, it is only the second book. I mentioned a while back I read a book called The Night Parade that was in the same Forgotten Realms series. I discovered that app called Thrift Books that sells all used books that used to be in libraries and whatever for super cheap. And so I enjoyed the Forgotten Realms when I was maybe a preteen, young teenager, but only had a few of them because there was lots of books that I like to read. And so I've found tons of them on Thrift Books, so I've ordered a ton, and I'm starting to read through them. But I can't believe this is only my second one, because I read The Night Parade way back in the winter, so I must have stopped for some reason. But anyways, The Shadows of Doom, book 1 of the Shadow of the Avatar trilogy. So this was released initially in 1995, and I think was one of the very first Forgotten Realms books, if I remember correctly. And it starts when the gods in Faerun, which is what this land is called, have been kind of cast down to Earth to roam, or not Earth, to Faerun, or whatever the land is, to roam as avatars. And so they've been stripped of their godhood, they've been stripped of their powers, and Mystra, who is the goddess of magic, chooses the wise old mage Elminster, who is one of the most powerful wizards in the land, to hold her magic while she goes through this embarrassment and torment and wanders the land, stripped of her powers. Now, the only problem is, when Elminster takes this power on, he loses his own ability to do magic, so he's kind of vulnerable. He still has some tricks and some trinkets up his sleeve, but he's pretty vulnerable. So Storm, I can't remember what her name is. Her name is Storm something, and I think she's I don't know if she's the leader of the Harpers or something like that, but she assigns 2 Harpers, Belkram and Ithar, I think his name is, to kind of mind Elminster and protect him in whatever he chooses to do now that he's got this situation going on. As well as, a warrior named Sharantir, and she is a knight of Myth Draenor. So he's got 3 really powerful allies who are good fighters to kind of protect him and help him do whatever he wants to do. So eventually what happens is him and Shar end up going off on their own, with Belkram and Ithar haven't quite caught up to them yet, and they end up going through some sort of portal after dealing with some Zhentarim wizards, which are an evil sect of wizards, and they end up in a place called Daggerdale, where they find this town has been overrun by by these a band of kind of hooligans or soldiers named the Wolves, who are led by evil wizards themselves. And so Elminster used to know the I want to call him, I can't remember what he was actually called, but the sheriff of the town or the leader of the town, whatever. And this guy has been imprisoned by these newcomers that took over the city, and have put him kind of basically slave work for the guy that used to lead this town. And so Elminster gets there, and just by chance, he's kind of wandering the land. He just kind of goes here and there. He's just trying to not draw enemies to where, because if anybody gets wind of what happened, they're going to go after him, because there's lots of people that want Elminster dead. He's lived for hundreds of years. He's pissed off a lot of bad people, and if they find out, they're going to go after him, knowing that he's vulnerable. So he's just trying to stay on the move and kind of figure out what he's going to do while he's in charge of Mystra's power, right? So they end up in Daggerdale. They end up in the city that's been overrun. So Shar, Elminster, Belcrum, and Ithar eventually catch up, and the four of them lead kind of a resistance against the wolves in this town in Daggerdale, and eventually liberate it. And afterwards, Mystra finally finds Elminster and says, "Okay, I'm ready to take my power back." So she's able to take that burden off of him, and he gets his own powers back. And that's kind of where the story ends off. But the land is still very unsettled. The gods are still wandering the land, and basically all magic and all power in the land is all kind of in an uproar and in chaos and in turmoil. So there's lots of people that are going to be coming out of the woodwork to take advantage of said chaos. So that should set us up for book 2. That little lead in. Next up, Transformers Earthspark. This is a 2-disc collection, of the first 10 episodes of the series. This was released, the series originally debuted in 2022, and as far as I know, it's only gone one season. So like I said, these are the first 10 episodes. The story is an interesting one. It's made by Nickelodeon, and so I think it's targeted towards a younger audience. But like I said, the story is very interesting. So it takes place 15 years after apparently a space bridge going back to Cybertron was destroyed, which essentially ended the civil war on Earth between the Autobots and the Decepticons. So Megatron is now actually working with Optimus Prime to make their home on Earth and protect the humans and just share the Earth. But there's still lots of rogue Decepticons out there that don't agree and are causing trouble, as well as other enemies and other situations that kind of rear their heads. And the humans in this story originally were from a big city somewhere in Pennsylvania, maybe Philadelphia, and they moved to a rural community called Witwicky, Pennsylvania. Always got to have a Witwicky in there somewhere, whether it's a person or a place. And so it's a family of 4. It's the mom and dad, I can't remember their names, and then there's the 2 kids, a young girl and then a slightly older brother, and I can't remember their names now too, Mo and something. But anyways, the older brother isn't excited to move to this rural town, whereas the young girl isn't that upset about it. But their mom has had dealings with the Transformers in the past, and she kind of works alongside them. So so the kids are used to giant transforming robots. And as they settle into this new environment, they discover a little cave, and with a glowing pool of blue liquid, and from it spawn these 2 new Transformers that are kind of linked to the 2 kids in a way. And they're not normal Transformers. They're kind of born from the Earth and kind of united with humanity with those connections with the 2 kids. And they end up calling them Terrans. So The kids take these Terrans under their wing and are, you know, Bumblebee's trying to train them, and they're trying to explain the ways of Earth and blah blah blah, and everybody's trying to find their way in this new situation. And of course they have to deal with, like I said, rogue Decepticons, this kind of this evil dude named Mandroid who has like a cybernetic hand or something like that, and he's causing trouble. And then even an agency that I think is supposed to be good, but they end up sending agents after the Terrans because they're interested in them, because of how different they are, I think is how it went. So they have to kind of foil these agents and defend the Terrans and keep them safe, sort of thing. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting concept in that Megatron and Prime are working together, and we've got these new Terrans, and yes, just some different kind of stuff that we haven't seen in Transformers before. My only complaint is that things are becoming so woke. It's unbelievable. You know, I'm pretty open-minded about pretty much everything, you know. I don't care who you nail. I don't care what you do for a hobby. I don't care what you do at all. Just enjoy your life, live it, have fun. But this whole issue of the transgender thing now, and the gender identity, it came up in one of the episodes, and like Optimus Prime had to apologize to one of the Terrans for calling them a he or whatever when they were a they and whatever. And it's just like, I don't care how you feel and what you want to do, what you identify as, but the whole world is now having to kind of learn this new terminology, and then when you get it wrong, people get pissed off. It's just, it's like all this stuff is being pushed on everybody, and a lot of people don't understand it, and it doesn't make sense to them, and it's just becoming a little much. You know what I mean? Like I said, if you feel that way, great. Do you, but you can't expect everybody to be on board with it and just conform to all these new kind of demands from people that are going through these experiences, right? So that's my only problem with it. Like I said, I don't care. Well, I don't want to say I'm liberal, because our liberal government are a bunch of fucking idiots, but I am liberal in my views, in that do what feels good. As long as you're not stealing from anybody or harming anybody, do whatever the fuck you want. Who cares? Whatever makes you happy, right? I just don't like it when society is forced to adopt new terminology and new whatever, just because there's a small percentage of people who feel a certain way, you know. It just seems a little extreme, and then to see this worked into you know, a young kids show, and you see Optimus Prime apologizing for using the wrong things, and it's like, oh my god, where are we going with this? And I'm playing a game on the PS5 right now, and the same thing kind of happened tonight on it, and I'm like, oh my god, this stuff is everywhere now. So don't want to offend anybody. I love y'all. Do what you want, but sometimes things are taken just a little too far. Just a little too far. And that's my problem. But anyways, cool concept for a show. And I really like the storyline behind it. It's different. It's interesting. The animation is pretty good, but like I said, it's Nickelodeon. It's kind of aimed at a slightly younger audience, I think. But you know me, if it's something related to one of my favorite franchises, I want to drink it all in. I want to know all the stories, no matter what level they're for, because I just love to know everything about my favorite universes. The only problem at this age is that once I intake all this information, I immediately forget it. It's fucking annoying. Anyways, that being said, next up we have Fast X. Finally got around to watching this. This, I believe, was from 2023, and it's the 10th movie in the series, but it begins with a flashback to 10 years before when this movie takes place. And you'll remember down in Rio de Janeiro, they pulled a job where they got a couple of cars. They drove a truck through it looked like a police station, but it was a bad guy. It was a drug cartel. But they drove a truck through it and then hooked up a couple cars with tow cables to a safe and robbed this drug dealer named, was it Hector, something like that, of all of his riches. And in the chase that ensued and whatever, this drug lord Hector ended up being killed. He got in a bit of a crash during the action, and then Hobbs at the end walked by, and if he was still alive, well, he wasn't afterwards when he went pop pop. So it begins with that flashback of that event 10 years earlier, and then it flashes forward, and we see the team take on a job in Rome where they're supposed to steal some sort of computer chip or something like that for something, because they work with the government now, Mr. Nobody and all that stuff. And so they were pulling this job in Rome. Dom and Letty were staying home for this one, so that the action was being led by Roman. And so along for the ride also were Tej and Ramsey and somebody. There was one more person. I forget who it is. Oh, Han. And so they end up doing this job in Rome, but it just keeps going wrong and wrong and wrong. Meanwhile, back in Los Angeles, Dom and Letty one night, Cypher, that nasty agent that they were set against in one of the movies, shows up at their house all bloodied and whatever, and she sits down and tells them, yeah, that job in Rome, it's a fake. There's a guy, remember that job you did in Rio de Janeiro 10 years ago when you stole the safe and killed Hector? Well, his son watched that happen, and he's a maniac. He's a literal fucking maniac, and he's after you guys now. So this job in Rome was set up by this maniac drug dealer's son, and it's all just basically a big trap to what he wants to do. Is he does want to kill Dom eventually, but he wants to make him suffer first, just like Dom made him suffer through those events 10 years ago. So, in this guy, who's played by Jason Momoa, is so funny in the movie. All of his little quips and comments and the way he just kind of, like, he literally plays a maniac really well. He's so funny, and he's always one step ahead of them. So the whole movie is basically them trying to catch up to this guy and foil his plans and bring him down, but he just keeps getting the drop on them and setting up another dastardly situation for them to work their way out of. And of course, there's cars and stuff everywhere. It's crazy action, and a lot of people die too. Most notably, spoiler alert, Dom's brother Jacob, who is played by John Cena. I can't believe John Cena died in the movie. When he ends up sacrificing himself to help Dom save his son, little Brian. So, and at one point, when Jacob first shows up as he's rescuing little Brian from his home, when the agents descend on them, he ends up grabbing this guy and he gives him a fucking attitude adjustment through the second floor of the house, right through the floor down to the floor below. It was awesome. I was like, oh, attitude adjustment. Oh, it was awesome. It was good. That's probably his best one. He put him right through a fucking floor. Anyway, so yeah, so it's just this whole sequence of events as I think his name is Dante, the maniac guy, stays one step ahead, and he pulls all these really cool tricks. He's got remote control big rigs and fucking all sorts of stuff. He blows up a dam. It's just crazy, and it kind of does end on a bit of a cliffhanger. So if we thought maybe the Fast and Furious franchise was done, I don't think it is. And at the end, there's a couple of cut scenes where we see Gal Gadot's character Giselle come back for a brief scene. We see The Rock come back as Hobbs right at the end, and Dante says, "I don't forget your part in this. I'm coming after you." And The Rock uses one of his favorite terms when he was wrestling and back in the day during the Attitude Era, and he's like, "I'm not hard to find. Come get me, you sumbitch." I fucking laughed. John Cena with an attitude adjustment. The Rock saying sumbitch, right? So, great movie. I enjoyed it very much. It was over 2 hours, but it flew by really quickly. And when you look at the number of people in this movie. Like the number of actors, the number of high profile actors, it's fucking nuts, right? Just crazy. Jason Statham came back. Like it's just crazy. Like look at the acting roster for that, and there's just so many big names that it kind of blows you away, right? Last up, I had so much fun playing this game, and you may have seen some gameplay footage if you're interested in Star Wars, and that's because it is Star Wars Jedi Survivor. So this is a follow-up to the Fallen Order game, which I played, I don't know, a couple years ago maybe. It takes place 5 years after the events of that game, and in the meantime, Cal Kestis, the main character of the story, who's a fallen Jedi who survived Order 66 and remember was found by the Inquisitors in that first game and had to go on the lam and met up with Seer, Junda, and Marin, the Night Sister, and Grease, the little four-armed pilot. So since then, he hasn't cut ties with Grease and Seer, but they have parted ways. They're all doing their own thing now. Cal is working with a mercenary named Bode. They have become good friends. Bode is fighting for the freedom of his daughter Kata. He wants her to have an upbringing. So they're all fighting the Empire for their own reasons. And Cal is still, I believe, working for Saw Gerrera. Seer, in the meantime, is on a... now I can't remember the... Is she on Jeddah? She might be on Jeddah. And she's kind of working with this order of kind of mystics or whatever to try and preserve knowledge and these archives of everything, and working to still undermine the Empire, but in her own different kind of way, whereas Cal's a little more hands-on, right? And then Grease, the pilot, has opened up a cantina on the world of Kobo. Now, Kobo is kind of like your main hub world, and probably the world where you find the most amount of items and stuff like that, where you can do a lot of action. And from Kobo, you kind of go to different planets as the story unfolds. And so yeah, so Bode and Cal planned this operation on Coruscant to steal some intel or something like that. It kind of goes awry. Most of their team is destroyed. Just Cal and Bode, I believe, get out. And I think even during the process, I think Bode was presumed dead, but he wasn't, if I remember correctly. That's right at the start of the game, so it was a while back. But yeah, so after this, Cal doesn't know what to do, so he seeks out Grease on Kobo and eventually gets back together with Seer. And while he's on Kobo, though, after meeting up with Grease and kind of adopting Kobo as his new home, he sets out to explore the land and ends up discovering this old droid named Z, who is from the High Republic era. Now, I have read some books from the High Republic series, which takes place, I think, a couple hundred years before, like, the main Star Wars timeline that we know from the movies and stuff. And maybe more than a couple hundred. No, maybe not. So, and this droid Z kind of informs Cal of what was going on. Z's master, I forget her name, a Jedi master, a female Jedi master, I forget her name, was at odds with another Jedi named Dagan Gera, who kind of turned dark, and they had opposing views, and some bad stuff happened. And one of the main things they were after was the location of a apparently secret world named Tanalorr, which you could only get to by piloting through this kind of maelstrom of an abyss that was super hard to navigate. But apparently there were these devices built to guide you through that kind of that maelstrom. So Cal is like, oh, a hidden world, Tanalorr, like, wouldn't that be perfect for us to start building a new world there, a new civilization there, and we could be hidden from the Empire. They wouldn't be able to get at us, and then when the time is right or whatever, like, we could always strike at the Empire out of the shadows kind of thing, right? So that becomes kind of your main objective in this game, is to find and get to this hidden world of Tanalorr and make it your new home and your new future sort of thing. So, but along the way, of course, you run into Inquisitors, you run into Darth Vader again. It's fucking awesome. It's a hard fight too. And yeah, so you just hop, skip, and jump to different worlds as the story unfolds and different objectives present themselves, and until you do eventually. I'm not going to give you any spoiler alerts on this one, but there is a twist in the end, and it's a good one. I didn't see it coming. Um, that kind of makes the culmination on Tanalorr bittersweet, let's say bittersweet. So, the game itself works very similar to the first one, Fallen Order. There's lots of different extras and items and outfits and parts that you can find during your journeys or earn, that you can use to upgrade Cal's abilities, upgrade his cosmetics and stuff like that. So if I really like these games because the story is amazing. It was produced by EA, or released by EA at least. The game was just, they're really well polished. They control really well. There's no glitching. The graphics are amazing. The sound's amazing. I mean, it is a Star Wars title, so you expect that kind of stuff. But it's just a really smooth, fun experience in the more modern gaming world. And you could try and blast through the game, but the game is so long, and you need that some of the fights near the end are so hard that you kind of need to at least upgrade Cal to a certain degree if you want to have success and complete the game. So, kind of like with the Spider-Man games, I made the same approach on this Star Wars game, where I didn't just do the story along, and I would stop and take breaks, and once I got to a planet, I would explore it as fully as I can, get all the items, get all the upgrades I could, and just jack Cal up as much as possible, as soon as possible, before I moved on to the next part of the story, because then it just makes things easier, right? Which is the same thing I'm kind of doing on Assassin's Creed right now. If you watch that gameplay footage, I jacked up my character there, and now the end fights that I'm running into are just fucking simple. I'm just destroying people, right? So that's always my approach for these types of games, and also it makes the value you get out of the game really high, because you just end up playing it for so long and getting so much out of it that that you just, you get that kind of full value for the money that you paid for it. So, but either way, both games, at first I thought I still liked Fallen Order better than Survivor, but I think by the end of it, I kind of liked Survivor a little more than Fallen Order. So, but either way, if you like Star Wars games and you haven't played either of these games in this series, you fucking should. They are amazing. So, Survivor in the books. So, like I said, I've already got a bunch of stuff done for my next round, so you should be seeing me in yet another practice jersey soon enough. Toodles. Meow.